I work in a mall. The mannequins started moving. It all started on a Tuesday. Tuesdays were always the slowest days at the mall. The kind of day where you could hear the faint hum of the fluorescent lights above and the occasional echo of a janitor's cart rolling across the polished floors. I worked at a mid-sized department store called Evergreen Emporium, a place that sold everything from cheap jewelry to overpriced home decor. My job was simple: restock shelves, assist customers, and occasionally rearrange the mannequins in the display windows. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. The mannequins were my least favorite part of the job. They were old. Older than me, probably older than the store itself. Their faces were chipped, their paint faded, and their hollow eyes seemed to follow you no matter where you stood. They were unnerving, but I tried not to think about it too much. After all, they were just mannequins, lifeless, inanimate objects. At least, that's what I thought. It was around 7 p.m. when I first noticed something strange. The mall was nearly empty, and I was closing up the store. As I walked past the display window, I caught a glimpse of one of the mannequins out of the corner of my eye. It was a female figure, dressed in a summer dress and holding a straw hat. I could have sworn its head had been facing forward when I last saw it, but now it was tilted slightly to the side, as if it were looking at me. I stopped and stared at it for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest. "Get a grip," I muttered to myself. "It's just a mannequin." I shook my head and continued closing up, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The next day, I arrived at work early to set up a new display. The mannequins were arranged in a casual group, as if they were friends chatting at a park. I adjusted their limbs and positioned their heads, trying to make the scene look natural. As I stepped back to admire my work, I noticed something strange. One of the mannequins, a male figure in a suit, had its arm raised slightly higher than I had left it. I frowned and reached out to adjust it, but as soon as I touched it, the arm moved on its own, swinging down to its side with a soft click. I froze, my hands still hovering in the air. My mind raced, trying to come up with a logical explanation. Maybe I had bumped it without realizing it. Maybe the joint was loose, but deep down, I knew that wasn't it. The movement had been too deliberate, too intentional. I decided to brush it off and focus on my work, but the unease stayed with me throughout the day. Every time I passed the display window, I couldn't help but glance at the mannequins, half expecting them to move again. They didn't, at least not while I was watching. By the end of the week, things had escalated. I started noticing small changes whenever I returned to the store after my breaks. A mannequin's hand would be in a different position. Its head would be tilted at a new angle. Once, I even found one of them facing the wrong way, as if it had turned around to look at something behind it. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination, or maybe a prank by one of my co-workers. But the changes were too subtle, too precise. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that no one else had been near the mannequins when the changes occurred. I decided to bring it up to my manager, a no-nonsense woman named Linda. She listened to my concerns with a raised eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "Mannequins don't move on their own," she said flatly. "You're probably just tired. Maybe you should take a day off." I wanted to argue, but I knew it was pointless. Linda wasn't the type to believe in anything she couldn't see with her own eyes, so I kept my mouth shut and tried to ignore the growing sense of dread that was settling in my chest. The breaking point came on a Friday night. I was closing up the store again, counting the cash register and locking up the displays. As I walked past the mannequins, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. One of them, the female figure in the summer dress, was missing. I scanned the display window, my heart pounding. The other mannequins were still there, but she was gone. My mind raced with possibilities. Had someone stolen her? Had she been moved to another part of the store? But I knew that wasn't possible. The display window was locked, and I was the only one with the key. I was about to call security when I heard a soft click behind me. I turned around slowly, my breath catching in my throat. There she was, standing in the middle of the store, her head tilted to the side as if she were studying me. Her straw hat was gone, and her dress was slightly askew, as if she had been moving. I stumbled backward, my mind screaming at me to run, but my legs refused to move. The mannequin didn't move either, not at first. She just stood there, her hollow eyes fixed on me. Then slowly, she raised her arm, pointing toward the back of the store. I followed her gaze, my heart pounding in my chest. The other mannequins were there, standing in a perfect line. Their heads were tilted at the same angle, their arms raised as if they were beckoning me to follow. I don't remember how I got out of the store that night. All I remember is running, my feet slamming against the polished floors as I raced toward the exit. I didn't stop until I was outside, gasping for air in the cold night air. The next day, I called in sick. I couldn't bring myself to go back to the store, not after what I had seen. But by Monday, I had no choice. I needed the job, and I couldn't afford to lose it over something that sounded so ridiculous. When I arrived at the store, everything seemed normal. The mannequins were back in their display window, arranged in the same casual group as before. The female figure was there too, her straw hat back in place, and her dress neatly arranged. It was as if nothing had happened, but I knew better. I could feel their eyes on me as I worked, their hollow gazes following me wherever I went. I tried to ignore them, to focus on my tasks, but the unease never left me. It wasn't long before the changes started again. This time, they were more obvious. The mannequins would be in different positions every time I turned my back. Sometimes, I would find them standing in the middle of the store as if they had wandered away from the display window. Once, I even found one of them, sitting in the break room, its head tilted as if it were listening to the conversation. I tried to tell myself that it was just a prank, that someone was messing with me. But deep down, I knew the truth. The mannequins were alive, or at least something was making them move. The final straw came on a Wednesday night. I was closing up the store again, my nerves on edge as I counted the cash register. As I walked past the display window, I noticed that all the mannequins were gone. My heart sank as I scanned the store, my eyes darting from corner to corner. They weren't in the break room. They weren't in the stock room. They weren't anywhere. I was about to call security when I heard a soft click behind me. I turned around slowly, my breath catching in my throat. The mannequins were there, standing in a perfect circle around me. Their heads were tilted at the same angle, their arms raised as if they were reaching out to me. I tried to run, but my legs refused to move. I was frozen in place, my heart pounding in my chest as the mannequins closed in around me. Their hollow eyes bore into mine, their painted faces expressionless but somehow menacing. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, it was over. The mannequins stopped moving, their arms dropping to their sides as if they had lost interest. I stumbled backward, my legs finally obeying my commands, and ran out of the store. I quit my job the next day. I couldn't bring myself to go back, not after what had happened. Linda tried to convince me to stay, but I refused. I didn't tell her the truth. I knew she wouldn't believe me. Instead, I made up some excuse, about needing a change of scenery. I never found out what caused the mannequins to move. Maybe it was some kind of prank, or maybe it was something more sinister. All I know is that I can't go near a mannequin without feeling a chill run down my spine. Even now, years later, I still have nightmares about those hollow eyes and those painted faces reaching out to me in the darkness. And sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I swear I can hear the soft click of a mannequin moving behind me.